pusha på och smeker med motståndet vi leker. Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och springer runt och creepar och motståndet vi slipar. Vi sitter här.
A lot of bad things entered into the world when we chose to do things our own way. When we chose to step away from the relationship with our Creator and make our own path. Got kind of bloated up with our own sense of pride and self, and we can do it ourselves, we don't need you, and trouble. That's one reason. I want you to imagine a beach, all right? Picture a beach in your mind with beautiful white sand as far as you can see. Now I want you to kneel down in the sand, feel your knees press into that warm sand, the grain of sand pushing against your knees, and then with your little, just with your fingertips, I want you to pick up one grain of sand. You see it in your hand? Imagine it. You know what that is? That's your life in eternity. That's the 75 or 80 years you'll spend on this planet compared to the beach of eternity. Pretty small, right? God's interested in eternity with you. Not just that. And our lives are all wrapped up in this 75, 85, if we're lucky, 95 years. But in the context of forever, these few hardships and difficulties we run into in this little grain of sand are nothing, as the Bible says, to be compared with the joy that awaits us. God doesn't promise to fix everything. God promises to walk with you through everything. Being a Christian is not a cure-all. It's not like, well, you know, I thought, this actually, the guy that wrote the Barbarian Way book that I told you I was reading even said this. He said, you know, some people are so disillusioned with Christianity because they've been given the impression that if they just accept Jesus, the world's going to be good and their life's going to be great. They're going to have a car in the garage. And where did they get that idea? Because too many Christians give them that idea. That if you just do this, your life is great. Or all these little material things like your bank account or your job, they're all going to be fixed. No. They won't be, because God is interested in forever. He's interested in us reflecting His love for the years that we are here and then forever. He's interested in just being in a relationship with us. And good things and bad things are going to happen because that's the imperfect world we live in. Can't stop it. You know, I could be a really good person and Caitlin could be a nutcase and she could decide to shoot me out of anger.
It's new. He's never done this before.
Now, I'm a good person. I do good things, but I can't control Caitlin. Caitlin has her own free will as well. Caitlin can make her choices as well. That's her privilege. But again, it's still only happening on the little grain. It's not, you know what I'm saying? We have an entire eternity of life ahead of us. Doesn't it make sense to pay much more attention to where you spend all the rest of it than to where you spend this one? Does anyone have a question relating to anything we've said? That's a good idea. I've done that a couple times, and that's a great idea. Does anyone have a question? Let me answer one more, because I know this is another big one that comes up. Why Jesus? I mean, there are plenty of religious leaders throughout history, right? Very, very, very religious men and great men. Here's why Jesus. Are you listening? Put your thinking caps on. This is so important. So important. Number one, Jesus fulfilled every prophecy spoken of the Messiah, written hundreds of years before he was born. He fulfilled all of them. All of them. I believe there are 60-some prophecies concerning who this Messiah would be, where he would be born, how he would be born, how he would die, what he would do, all kinds of stuff. He fulfilled all of them. I believe some scientists did some calculations and said that the odds of him fulfilling 6 of them would be like 1 to the 15 zeros after it. I mean, it gets beyond the realm of possibility. So prophecy alone confirms that he was the one that was prophesied about. The other big one is that he rose from the dead. Now a lot of people are like, well, I don't know about that.
It's going to be a voice actor. No nursery here.
Well, somebody will say, well, I don't know about that. Well, you guys, 500 people saw him alive after he died. And when he rose again, 500 people were eyewitnesses. Now, let me ask you, if you were brought into court, you had to prove something, and you brought in 500 witnesses, do you think you'd win the case? Probably. There are plenty of evidences, physical evidences, that he rose from the grave. People don't want to talk about him because if he did, then he is who he claimed he is, and that opens a whole can of worms. Now I'm somehow responsible. What do I do with that? If he is who he claimed he was, what do I do with that? And the third reason is because Jesus claimed to be the one and only way back to a relationship with God. The only way. Not one of many. Not one from a short list. The only way. Now, if you ask anybody on the street, who do you think Jesus was? What do you think of Jesus? What are they going to say? He was a great teacher. He was a very gifted speaker. He was a great prophet. They're going to say all these nice things, right? They may not concede that he was the one and only Son of God sent to save us. They may not admit that, but they'll never say anything bad about him, right? He's always a good guy, right? Well, here's the problem with that argument. If he isn't who he claimed he is, he's not a good guy. Think about it, right? Right? If he claims to be the only way to God, and no one's going to get to God except through him, if he was not who he claimed, then he is a liar. He is a deceiver of millions. Nobody ever says that. But those are your only choices. He either is who he claimed he was, or he is a bad guy. So that's a serious thought to have, to think about. That's a serious thought to contemplate. Does anyone have any question? It's okay if you don't, but is there any kind of a burning? Well, what about? Does anyone have a question before we finish up?